Look at that leg, man. You think he bought it to get free coffee or what? Laughter burst out, sharp, hollow, and slick like a blade sliding over glass. The kind of laughter born of people who've never known pain, never smelled scorched blood, never watched a human being come apart in smoke and dust. Nice jacket, Grandpa. Clearance from the army surplus? Another voice cut in, young, dry, and full of delight. Hey, look! The old man's playing Sold It! Shut up. Maybe he bought that prosthetic to score free coffee. The laughter flared again, bigger, louder. It slapped the wood ceiling, bounced off the walls, hit the floor, and spread through the small space of Queen's Café. A sound that didn't just break the quiet. It tore at dignity. It was soulless, like an empty shell echoing. A sound only the too young, who don't understand loss, can make. I didn't turn. I didn't need to look. Because this story didn't start with them. It began long before, in silence, in smoke, in the smell of gunpowder and mud, in the heartbeat of a man who learned to listen to falling rounds and still keep his breath steady. My name is Thomas Keane. Once, they called me Sergeant Keane. Now, at 72, I'm just Tom, an old man who has coffee every Saturday morning, trying to find a little warmth of life in the small café just outside Fort Bragg. Queen's Café isn't special. A sun-bleached wooden sign, a few dusty panes, dark wooden tables, and tired chairs. But to me, it's the last quiet outpost. The singe of coffee, the bacon smoke, the damp old wood. All of it braids into a scent I can't find anywhere else. A scent of memory. A scent that tastes like the past. I always sit in the far corner, where I can see the window, but no one can see me clearly. That habit isn't random. It's reflex, carved into the bones of anyone who ever slept with an M16 across his chest. I pick a seat with my back to the wall, so every exit stays in sight. Even in the safest room, I need an egress. From that corner, I see everything. Humvees rolling the main road, squads of young soldiers moving fast, crisp uniforms, straight backs, bright eyes. Sometimes I catch a shadow of myself in them. Back when I first put on a uniform, still believing honor was armor, and courage could save the whole world. That morning, like any other Saturday, a thin November sun slid through the dusty glass and laid pale gold bars across my table. On the wall, the old pendulum clock ticked, steady, a sound so familiar I could count the swings in my head. Mary, the owner, set a black coffee in front of me. No sugar, no cream, no questions. She's done that for 15 years. Each time her hand put the cup down, the heat spread with that bitter smell, and I could breathe a little easier. We never needed many words. A look was enough. Some people don't need to ask why you come. They already know. That morning began like that. Ordinary, familiar, peaceful. Until boots sounded at the door. 2 privates came in. Tan desert boots hitting wood hard, too loud, too much. They were too clean, uniforms too new, collars still stiff. On their sleeves, jump wings shone like fresh polish, young, hard, and full of themselves. Paratroopers, the kind who've never really fallen. They took the table right behind me. Chairs scraped, harsh, impatient. Their voices cracked out next. Too big, too clear, too sure. They bragged about training, about a hard-nosed platoon leader, about night jumps. Between the stories came that laugh, the kind that belongs to boys who still think life is a test, not a battlefield. I didn't intend to listen, but the words began to slide my way. Hey, check out the old guy, playing Soldat. One of them tossed it out between fork and knife. I didn't need to look. I know that gaze. The one I saw too many times in ranks of new recruits, half curious, half contemptuous. The look of someone who hasn't lived long enough to know real fear. "Nice jacket, Grandpa. Army surplus clearance?" The second voice followed. Then the two of them broke into laughter. I kept silent. The silence wasn't weakness. It was a choice. The choice of someone who's learned that answering only thickens the smoke. I sipped my coffee, tried to focus on the heat rising into my face. But then the next line dropped like an ice stone down my spine. "Look at that leg, man. You think he bought it to get free coffee?" This time the laughter was louder, brighter. It spread through the room and touched a place I'd thought had cooled long ago. I heard it like a shard of metal snapping in my head, the sound I heard in the Ashau Valley, when fragments bit into wet earth, right before the silence swallowed everything. The room changed tempo. Cutlery went still. A few sideways looks. Two old men at the next table, who'd worn uniforms once too, dropped their eyes to their cups as if shame pooled there. Mary froze mid-wipe, her hand tightening around the rag. Her face went pale, but her eyes burned low. The silence of the others, that heavy, helpless kind, hurt worse than the laughter. But the boys didn't stop. Silence only made them bolder. One of the privates, Miller, I caught the name on the dull metal strip, stood up. He came to my table, boots thudding with a parade ground rhythm that meant nothing. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw his height, the fresh buzz cut, the new sun on his skin, bright eyes gone cold. He bent, smile twisted hard, the kind you only see on people who've never had to say sorry. "Let's see this hero leg," he said, and before I could move, he ducked down and yanked my pant leg up. Metal joints showed, catching the tired window light. That pale gold flashed across scuffed carbon fiber, dull and worn, like an old wound that never closes. Miller whistled, long. "Oh, he brought props. Guess the story's real." The other one stepped closer. He pinched the sleeve of my M65, lifted it, took a long sniff like he'd treat a prize. "Mothballs and old sweat," he said, and flung my sleeve back down. "You sure you didn't fish this out of the base dumpster, Grandpa?" Laughter popped again, rougher now, dull like an old round going off. I still didn't speak. I set my palm on the cup, letting the heat soak in. It ran through old burns, through tears left by shrapnel, through vessels that shake with age. In my head, the memories rose like smoke. I saw a 19-year-old in a fighting hole, half his body buried in mud, eyes wide, calling for his mother in broken breaths. I saw two boys pass the last mouthful of water from a dry canteen. I saw a man lying still under a palm in Grenada, both hands gripping a photo of his daughter. And I saw myself, the one who lived, sitting here, listening to the young laugh at a price they've never had to pay. I wasn't angry. I was tired. Tired in the bone. The kind of tired only old soldiers know. Not tired of life. Tired because the world forgot how to respect what should be respected. Miller leaned closer, his voice dropping. "What's wrong, old man? Cat got your tongue?" That's when I turned. A slow, sure movement, as if every joint still remembered how to pivot toward the direction of fire. The room held its breath. Our eyes met. His were bright, still too clear. No fear, only dumb swagger. In mine, for him, there were jungles, deserts, nights, sweat, and the souls who never got their last words out. I spoke, rough, low even, Son, I had a tongue once. Lost it somewhere between Quezon and Kuwait. He blinked. One brief beat of confusion. His buddy laughed, but thin this time, strained, like a cover for something he didn't yet understand. I set the cup down. The heat had fled. Like every morning on every field, warmth always leaves before you're ready.
Get out!
That's enough.
What did you say?
Mary's voice carried. Not loud, but weighty. She stepped out from behind the counter, rag still in hand, eyes gone stern. You boys have no idea who you're standing in front of. Miller raised a brow. Come on, ma'am. We're just joking. Mary's reply was cool. I don't see the joke. He earned the right to sit and drink his coffee in peace. You haven't. Now, out. The air thickened. I heard the pendulum clock. Tick, tack, stretching time thin. The two privates kept their tongues, but their eyes flashed that baby-faced challenge, the kind that exists before a man learns what consequences cost. And then, the door opened. The bell over it chimed, bright, clear. Light spilled in, warm and slant, laying itself along the old floorboards. A man stepped through, tall, solid, each step giving off a quiet authority. His army dress uniform was pressed razor-sharp. A silver star glinted on his shoulder in the sunlight. He stopped on the threshold, eyes sweeping the café like he was assessing a battlefield. Both privates snapped up straight, reflex more than thought. Their spines locked, their eyes slid away. The air shifted, like someone had reset gravity. In that angled light, he paused half a beat, letting the room catch up to his presence. Then he came in. Each footfall on the old wood said something, without words. Green service coat crisp, collar set neat, white gloves tucked under one arm. On his shoulders, stars shone without bragging, like water reflecting sky. The two privates jerked taller, that last fog of arrogance burning off like dew. The man didn't look at them first. His gaze made one slow circuit, resting on each face, stopping on the traces of a morning knocked sideways. When it reached me, a small warmth sparked, like an ember under ash. He came to my table and stopped, standing at attention. His hand rose in a salute, short and clean, like a cold blade laid along the grain. His voice had a deep, trained calm, held down by years. Good morning, Sergeant Keane. The room froze. That rank hit the air and cinched the loose joints of the morning, turned the whispers into silence. I lifted my eyes and met his, as if a familiar road had appeared behind a dusty bend. Good morning, Ray. General Raymond Cole pulled out a chair and sat. He set his cap and gloves at the edge of the table, slow, like he was lowering a piece of weather he'd just folded up. Steam from the coffee curled between us in thin threads. He smiled, a little. Still take it black, Tom. I never learned another way, Ray. The smile pinched out as he turned to the two young soldiers. The warmth slid away, and the steel of a commander showed. The kind who knows one bad order by an inch can cost a mile of blood. Mary called me, he said, even. She said 2 soldiers from the 101st Airborne were doing something that made this whole room go stiff. I left a meeting to come here, to greet a man worth more than every chair in that conference room put together. His eyes pinned them, not with a roar, with a cold clarity that makes men pull a blanket of discipline over themselves. Do you have any idea who you just mocked? Silence fell, thick as sand. Not because they didn't hear, because any answer would break itself on the wall of what was true. The man in front of you is Sergeant Thomas Keane. He stood in this division's ranks before your parents knew each other's names. He walked the jungles of Vietnam, jumped into Grenada, left his blood in Kuwait. He paused. In that notch of quiet, even the pendulum seemed to slow, as if to listen all the way. That night in the desert, he went on, the wind drove sand across our faces like thin knives. The sky burned, horizon to horizon. Our convoy was hit in a nowhere place. I was a young captain, thrown onto my back, ears ringing, nose and throat full of hot grit, eyes refusing to see. I remember thinking, one more round, and this body will float like a husk. Then a hand grabbed my ruck strap. A rough voice, steady as a boundary stone in the dark, told me not to sleep. Sergeant Keane, bleeding from the shoulder, pulled, lifted, and then threw me across his back. His eyes clouded, half a second, like a man shocked by cold water. We walked through the night, through sand that hissed like needles in our feet, past pockets of coals still glowing, past explosions far off, thinning out. What I heard clearest was his heartbeat right under my ear, slow, steady, like a big drum muffling the panic in my chest. Dawn rose from the rim of the earth, and they found us. I was breathing. He was unconscious. His gaze dropped to my leg, my pant still tugged up from the stunt. That leg you turned into a joke, he said, slow, was shattered by a mine while he was covering me. The OR burned like a chapel that night. They kept him alive by taking a piece of him away. I kept all my pieces because he put my life ahead of his own. The café went so quiet you could hear sugar dissolve. Outside, a maple leaf slid down the pane, slow on purpose, and snagged at the frame. He was awarded a silver star for gallantry, a bronze star for service, and purple hearts for the blood he left, the general said, his breath catching at the tail of the line. But he doesn't wear them. He keeps them in a drawer, not because he disrespects honor, because he holds sacred the names of those who didn't come home. He faced the privates, each word light but sharp, leaving a clean cut. You laughed at his jacket? That jacket kept jungle wet and desert fire off backs younger than yours. You mocked his silence? That silence was bought with the roar of machine guns and the last breaths of men on stretchers. You insulted a living legend of your own division. You stained the wings on your chests. I saw anger rising in Ray's eyes, not loud, compacted tight, waiting for the order that would open the floodgate. I set my hand on his sleeve, gently. The touch like two soldiers swapping posts in the dark. No talk needed. Don't, Ray, I said. They're young. They don't know. They repeat what they've heard, not what they've seen. He looked at me, and the anger dimmed, like a headlight turned down by a familiar hand. You're always the same, Tom, he breathed. Still pulling men back into the line instead of pushing them out. He turned back, his command voice returning, firm, not cruel. You won't be booted from the army. That's the easy door, and the useless one. Starting tomorrow, every weekend for a long enough stretch to teach your pride to stand still, you'll report to the VA hospital. You'll mop floors, change sheets, empty pans, push wheelchairs, brew coffee. You'll sit in white plastic chairs and listen to the stories usually swallowed before dinner. Listen until your eardrums learn to vibrate with respect. Acknowledge. The last echo in acknowledge had barely fallen when their answer snapped up. Uneven, but honest. Aye, General. Now apologize to Sergeant Keane, he said. Then leave this café the way men do, knowing what to do with their caps from here on. They stepped up. The one named Miller bowed so low all I saw was the pale back of his neck. His voice snagged in the narrow part of his throat. "Sergeant, we're sorry. We were stupid and rude. We didn't know. Please forgive us." I looked straight into their eyes. The glaze of swagger had flaked off, exposing the softer human layer. I've seen eyes like that too many times, on drill fields, at tree lines, on the sand of far-off shores. I didn't lecture. I didn't preach. I handed them a single order, short enough to carry for life. "Make the apology mean something." They nodded, as if nodding under a weight they'd just learned the name of. Then they turned and left. The first step wobbled, the second held. By the third, their backs were straight. When the door closed behind them, the little bell on the frame rang, bright and thin, like a button sewn back to its proper place. Ray set his hand on my shoulder. Light pressure, but sure. The kind that exists between men who've walked through a long night with nothing promised except the next step. "You saved me once, Tom," he said softly. "Maybe today you saved 2 more. I let a small smile show. The smile of someone who knows kindness doesn't grow like wildflowers on every hill. It needs tending, watering, and sometimes shelter from bitter winds. "I don't want to see another soldier fall," I said, "whether to a bullet or to his own mouth." He nodded, lifted his cap, pulled on his gloves. Before he left the table, he saluted again. Shorter, heavier, like a pebble placed on the pulse of a dam. He tipped his head to Mary, "Thanks," and went. His square shadow crossed the sunlight, drawing a strip of quiet behind it. When the door clicked shut, Queen's Café inhaled and exhaled like a body easing out of a cramp. Cutlery resumed. Chairs scraped back into place. Someone cleared a throat. But softer now, gentler, as if no one wanted to scratch a surface newly smoothed. Mary came over and set a fresh coffee in front of me. Steam climbed, catching light, twisting with the bitterness into an invisible thread that tied the morning back together. Mary set the new cup down. Steam lifted, curling into the light like strands of silver hair. "This one's on the house," she murmured, and laid her hand on the back of mine for a second. Enough warmth to linger after she turned away. I took a sip. The bitterness opened into a thin sweetness, like the small laugh of someone who's forgiven something. I looked through the glass. The flag at the base gate rippled in a light wind. In those stitched seams, little lines held colors together, the way stories keep scattered people in one community. I touched the coat's edge, traced the loose thread at the shoulder. I remembered jungle rain falling like a sheet. The violin string whine of mosquitoes in my ear. Desert sand hard as glass at night. The metallic taste of the sweat of a man riding on my back. I remembered hands that slipped out of mine, and hands that stayed. And every time someone calls me by that old rank, Sergeant, my spine pulls straight on its own, shoulders square, eyes level to a door half open. For a few heartbeats, I stand tall again. Outside, the sun slid a fraction. Inside, spoons touched porcelain once more, small, steady, calm. I lifted the cup, heat pressing into my palm, and let the morning move on, no longer torn by empty laughter, but stitched by the quiet threads of respect just found again.